Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session, Advanced FlexBook Editing. I'm Carl, one of the CK12 team members, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar. A reminder that this webinar is a core session for the Certified Educator Program, so there's an assignment for the session, which can be found in the CEP book. Please be sure that to preview the questions and make sure you're set to answer them, as you will need to work your way through the assignment in one sitting once you click Start Quiz. Like our other sessions, we encourage you to use the chat window in Zoom to connect with others, making sure to select all panelists and attendees, while the Q&A window is for questions for the CK12 team. This will help us keep track of answers and make sure we get to all of your questions. We've created a handy resource page for each webinar session. You can find it in the matching section of our CEP Flexbook or at the tiny URL listed at the screen, which is tinyurl.com/CK12ADVFB2019, which we'll put in the chat window right now. It is not case sensitive. You can use uppercase or lowercase. You're welcome to print these resource pages and simply save them onto your desktop. We hope that you can use it after as a reference for when you're working on the assignment or editing Flexbooks throughout the year.
Thanks, Carl, and thank you to everyone who joined us for today's session on advanced Flexbook editing. Given this isn't one of the starting sessions, we're going to jump right in. So with that, in our Getting Started with Flexbooks and the 2.0 platform session, we covered the basics. This included finding content on CK12, simple edits, and sharing your content with students and others. If you missed that session, I highly encourage you to watch the recording or join us for a future offering. In this particular webinar, along with a brief review of some basic edits, we'll be covering the following topics. We're starting with converting to and enhancing Flexbooks. This includes all of the options to adding content, resources, practice details, and related modalities. We'll then talk about adding clarity and formatted equations, using our editor to add in links, headers, and other elements, as well as our math editor to format equation text. We'll talk about incorporating, formatting, and citing images, both including our licensing, as well as what attributions you would need to include, and then options such as figure versus inline. And we'll wrap up with embedding videos, interactives, inline questions, and more, so finding and using embed codes for multimedia within your lessons. Our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand all of the options you have as you customize and enhance your Flexbook 2.0 on CK12.
But before we get into the core content of this webinar, it would be great if we found out a little bit more about your knowledge of our editing tools. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that will ask about any customization you might have done with CK12. So what experience do you have using and customizing CK12 books? And please select all that apply to you. And they start with, I'm new to CK12 Flexbooks. I've used CK12 Flexbook 2.1 as is. I've used CK12's original Flexbooks as is. I've made some basic edits, added images, embedded some videos, linked modalities, used the math editor, or you've built a Flexbook from scratch. So go ahead, spend a few minutes and click on all those boxes of things that you've done. And we'll give you a few minutes to go through that. All right, we have a few more people have left to answer. So we'll give you just a few final seconds to finish voting. All right, let's go ahead and we'll share out the results. So it looks like, as we would expect, that a lot of you are new to CK12 Flexbooks, but a good number of you have used Flexbook 2.0 as is, and and also have used 1.0, our original Flexbooks. But it looks like this webinar is going to be great for most of you because it's going to give you all the advanced skills that you need to really create some great content for your students there. All right, let's review a few points about basic customization of FlexBooks and FlexBooks 2.0. You'll see some of this again in this webinar as we work our way through, and we're happy to go through it if you have any questions, but we'll focus on the advanced components for this particular webinar. So you can click Customize to start the process, or from the library choose Create New Modality. You can also delete and reorder content. You can add content via the menu with the editor or when browsing on CK12. And you can share FlexBook 2.0 via a URL, CK12 classes, integrated LMSs, PDF downloads, which will be available in August, or the share plane. You can use the Assign button on any FlexBook 2.0 lesson to quickly assign the content and matching practice to your CK12 or Google class if you want to see reports on student progress. So with that, let's jump into some more advanced topics with converting and enhancing CK12 books.
Thanks, Carl. So if you don't have a single FlexBook 2.0 that you want to start customizing, you can take content from one or more 2.0 FlexBooks and add them to your new book, or even start from scratch. Once you have a book, you'll want to make sure your attributions are up to date, and you can even add in additional resources. If each lesson is tagged to a math or science concept on CK12, you'll see matching practice. This can be swapped for practice from another concept or any quiz that you might have made. And finally, you can remove or add related modalities, such as videos, interactives, or study guides for each lesson in FlexBooks 2.0. So with that, I'm going to steal this screen over from Carl, and we are going to go ahead in and explore CK12. So let's do that. So hopefully you guys can all see my homepage from here. And we had some questions in terms of often kind of how do I start customizing? How do I start creating a FlexBook? So let's start with one of our new 2.0 FlexBooks. So I'm going to start with Algebra 2. I can access that directly here from the Math by Level option. You can also explore using subjects for that same browse option, or this Explore option here, and I can find all my 2.0 FlexBooks. But we're going to jump right into that Algebra 2 book. And because I'm logged in, when I click on this Choose option, I have the option to customize this book. And so let's say I want to take this book or most of this book, and I'm going to click Customize. From there, if you were in our basic one, you could see kind of how to add or adjust different pieces. But we want to make sure that we understand how to combine some books or create books and pull from different places, because really the converting into 2.0 is a big deal. If I wanted to add content directly, I could add a new chapter here or a new read myself. I could toggle down and kind of explore or expand any of these pieces. But right now, I'm just going to say I'm going to create a advanced math demo book. And we are going to save this book. So one of the things I want to make sure that I'm doing is I'm either editing from within the book or I'm adding to the book separately, but I'm not doing both at the same time because then the system isn't sure if we're trying to add or if we're trying to edit. So I'm in here, I've made this book, I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to go over and I'm going to explore on CK12. So I can use this nice little CK12 logo to pull content. And let's say I want to add some content from a higher level math and finance. And I happen to know that there's some in our pre-calculus book, which I can find under analysis, or I can explore my original FlexBooks if I need to pull content from there. And let's say I pick all of those books that have to do with that higher level analysis piece. So I'm going to open my pre-calculus concepts book. And in a 2.0 FlexBook, I can either add the entire book, like I could do at this level, or individual reads. For some of our original books, to help you kind of bring content into 2.0, I can actually do it at the single chapter level as well. So for right here, I'm going to, let's say, add a unit on finance. And right here at this chapter outline, I will still see this Add to FlexBook textbook option. And you'll see that I can create a new FlexBook, or I could add it to any existing FlexBooks. So let's add it to that advanced math demo book that I was just creating in 2.0. And that said it added it to there. So now if I want to go back to that, I can always open that book from my library. So if I go to my library and I open the advanced math demo book, because I own this book, instead of seeing customize when I click choose, I'm going to see the ability to edit this. So it's already in my library. This is a book I'm working on. I can now edit this book. So it's going to load that for a second. And you'll see now that there's a unit on finance kind of at the end of this section. That's the one that I added in. So a couple of things that we want to make sure that we do is we want to make sure that we add the attributions cleanly for this. So at the book level, we have 3 different tabs. We have our edit tab for the kind of scope and sequence piece. We have resources if we wanted to upload resources. And then we have book level details. So notice that the description in here is related to the Algebra 2 book I started with because that's the book I customized from. So I would need to go back over and say ck12.org. And I'm going to look into that pre-calculus book. I can pull that up from here. I can maybe search for that. So there's all different ways to access that content. Here's that book. And I want to make sure that I pull the attributions from this book. So anytime that you're adding to a FlexBook, because you're adding a section and it's not pulling the book structure, you do need to make sure you go over to the details and at minimum add in the attributions. So I could update this description based on what I want it to be, but I want to make sure I add Mark Spong and Caitlin Spong as my authors and editors. So I'm going to click over to there. I'm going to add an attribution for the author, and I'm going to add an attribution for the editor. Okay, so in order to work under our license, which is Creative Commons Non-Commercial Attribution License, the CC BY in there says it's an attribution piece. I do need to make sure that I'm pulling those attributions if I'm pulling from different books and combining them into one. So at this level, the grade's probably right. I could add other subjects. I could change this and say, instead of this full 2-year course, this advanced book includes content from Algebra 2 and Finance, whatever I want that to be. And so I can save kind of at this book level structure. So we'll go ahead and we'll save that. You'll now see on this book page my new description up here. My authors are CK12 and Mark Spong. If I want to see any other details, I would click on this book details piece, and that would show me my editor as well, and kind of any other pieces that are adjusted from here. So let's go back into this book for a second. I'm going to go back in and edit a little more. And that attribution piece can also happen at any point within a particular book. So the resources, I could upload maybe a worksheet. Make sure that if you're uploading anything into our system that it fits under our copyright. So that's just something I'm going to say repeatedly throughout this as you guys edit. But let's pick a particular topic. So let's say I want to edit trigonometry. The edit option for chapter level, notice this right here. It says chapters cannot be used to group. They can be used to group concepts, but the content won't be available. So basically the edit chapter option within our 2.0 books is just this chapter title, but you're going to want to ignore all of these other pieces because they don't show up within the book at the chapter level for our 2.0 environment. If I instead picked a particular section within here, I can keep the title if I want, or I can change that title. And I could go ahead in and I could upload resources at this particular section. You'll see here we have Chapter 4 Pre-Calc Concepts. So it pulled some resources from there originally because I think some of that section was being pulled from that book. We have details on that particular piece. I can add attributions, or in this case, the attributions already exist for the editors and Mark Spong, and it looks like CK12 did some work on this as well. And then I can click over and I can look at the related modalities. So in this particular case, you'll see here that we have trigonometric ratio. This is a study guide. There's a real world application video, some Clicks interactives, all built into here. So if you want to customize this, you could say, well, maybe I don't want this video, so I can remove this video, and that will remove it. We curated some ones we thought would be useful for you, but you have the option to do that. Under details, if I go back to details for a second, you'll see something here. It says the primary concept is right triangle trig. So you could swap that concept out. It would replace both the practice with the practice for the new concept you put in. Or you could leave that and say, okay, I'm going to add more related modalities. And I can choose to add a modality. So it looks like these are already added, and maybe I wanted to add this new video in there. That would be totally fine. If I add that selected choice, you'll see that show up here. And then if I also wanted to add in a quiz, this is one option for kind of swapping or practice for a quiz. So I could add in, it looks like I have a jumpstart quiz, a quiz on right triangles, so I could choose to replace that. Now, if I did that here, it would replace it just like it would if I saved this section. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. I'm not gonna replace it from here. I'm gonna replace it from the main page, but I'm just gonna close this out. So within the individual section, and we'll get into this kind of editor piece in a little bit in this lesson, but I can add resources, I can update my details, and I can add related modalities. And then if I keep it as a draft, that's just kind of as I'm working. And as soon as I finalize my draft, then that would allow my students to see any updates that I've made, or anyone else that's working with that book to see updates that I've made. So really the draft mode is for the, hey, I got a phone call and my sentence isn't completed version of saving, versus the alternative. So I just mentioned kind of from that related piece, the ability to swap practice. So this particular concept, we've redone our 2.0 environment. So if you're unfamiliar, all of our bottom toolbar stuff has moved to this grid. So I'm going to expand that for a second. You can see insights, you can see related content. So if I click on that related content, you'll see that the new video I added for related modalities is showing up here at the bottom. And I can click on that, it'll open that particular video, or I can go back to my right triangle trig option. But you can also see kind of concept details. And so once again, that concept details tells you this is the primary concept for right triangle trig. And sorry, that was really quick. So right down at the bottom, I have that concept. And if I go back to the page, that concept is the practice that's showing up. So this adaptive practice piece is related to that particular concept. So I have two options to customize this piece. I could choose a different practice. So I could change my concept to a different concept, or I could switch this to a quiz. Now, this switch to quiz button is the same as if I had done that within the modality piece. That one pulled up kind of content most closely related. This one looks like it's pulling up the most recent quizzes I've done. So I could explore my quizzes, I could edit them, I could add a new quiz if I wanted right here. All options for working your way through. But that does replace the practice with a quiz. So just remember that right now, if I chose this little assign button and assigned it to CK12 or Google Class, it would assign the lesson here and the attached practice, and it would give a report on that practice. If I swap that practice for a quiz through the related modalities workflow or through this view practice option, it would assign the lesson and the matching quiz instead of that practice. So I think kind of with that piece, we're going to just pause for a quick second. I'm going to see what questions we might have, and then I'll move into adding clarity within that particular lesson.
All right, Katie. So one of the first questions we have here is when a user tries to search and trying to decide whether to incorporate a resource into book, they only see at grade or basic, but not what grade it was originally created for. Can they find out the grade, or what are they missing?
So the at grade versus basic tagging on our text is based on if we have more than one resource for that particular topic. So for example, for chemistry, I think there's an intermediate and there's either a basic or an advanced version that goes with that one. So if you saw content, your standard chemistry book would be that at grade version. And I do understand that chemistry is taught sometimes in freshman year in high school, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. So that at grade is not specific to a particular grade, especially for high school classes that are taught at different grades. But it's more that would be kind of your standard intermediate regular level coursework for that. And then any available resources that we've written for a student who needs more support at the basic level or a student who needs more of a challenge at the advanced level would show up with that tagging.
And then another user wants to find out, what do you add to the resources tab? Please give some examples, and why do you use this tab instead of adding the resources directly into the chapter?
So I would say, for the most part, you'd want to add the resources directly into the chapter. So you can see right here, you kind of added an interactive. We'll talk about embedding some of these pieces. That's really for something that's an external resource, like a PDF that you might want to include. Let's say you made a lab worksheet that's all yours, that's not copyrighted, you didn't buy that or purchase that or lease that from someone, but that you made and you wanted to upload and have students have access to right in that book. That would be something I would add to that resources tab, because it's an external document that I want to have them be able to download as that clean document.
Another question comes to us from Julie, who asked, teacher answer keys are in the resource tab for some content. Are they located also in other places?
Right now you'll find answer keys kind of in different places based on when we created that resource. For the most part, if you're looking for an answer key, I would check the resource tab for the book level or the first section within a chapter or the chapter level for some of our older books. That's definitely the first place to kind of check out. You might see some also hyperlinked in there or within any attached teacher guides or lesson plans in some of our new books, but definitely a place to start.
All right, and then Michelle was wondering if you could show again or talk about the difference between practice and a quiz on a lesson.
Sure, and kind of we'll do this and then maybe I'll jump back into doing some editing pieces, and we'll keep answering questions in Q&A and we'll keep answering questions live, but we want to make sure we get through the core content as well. So right here, this practice, if I saw this practice, I'm going to go back. This allows me to explore. So as a teacher, I can preview this. As a student, this says right here, students will need to get 10 correct answers to complete their practice goal. So the practice is set up to be adaptive, meaning every student gets different questions based on how they're doing. It challenges them to kind of meet at their level or recommends resources. And then a quiz is a custom practice. So it's something that I have created as a teacher. I've hand chosen the questions, or I've had the system choose a variety of question types and levels, but every student gets the same questions, and I can put some other restrictions on that in terms of not seeing hints, the number of times they can do it. We will go in depth into the difference between practice and quizzes in this afternoon's customizing session, so if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely recommend checking that out, but you want to kind of keep that in mind as you work your way through. One note while we're on kind of the screen, I'm going to go, this section I've already customized, but if I clicked over to another section that I haven't started editing yet, and it's really just pointing towards the other session, if I click view practice and I want to swap that out, the first thing it's going to have me do is save that section. So it's just kind of creating a copy of that section in my own library. It's still within this book, and I can just save that title, and then as soon as I do that, I now have the option to swap this to a quiz. So it just kind of made a quick copy. Now I can add this assessment, swap that out. So just keep that in mind that you may get one extra pop-up in that screen, and it just means you haven't previously added that section. But let's go into the section itself and make some edits. So from a 2.0 FlexBook, I'm going to go back to the book. I can do that through this little breadcrumb piece here, or using our navigation on the left. And I'm going to click up to this book. I'm going to choose to edit it, and we're going to go into that first section and play around with a couple things within our editor so you can see what those look like. So let's open this section. I'm going to do this because it's already made a copy. It'll more quickly jump into that instead of having to take time to create that copy. And I think I didn't click it, so let's try that one more time. There we go. And once I'm in here in the basic editing, kind of if I select any of this text, you have your standard editing options right here. Bold, italics, underline, strike through, sub and superscript, text color options, highlight color options. We have a couple different format options. So right here we have section 1, which is kind of our header sections. Section 2 would be a subheader, 3, and then most of your text is going to be in standard paragraph form. So that changed that there. Let's put this back as a header. You have your standard bullets and numbered list, totally options. And we're going to go through some of these other pieces here. But I want to start by talking about kind of our math editor, just to give you a little bit of a piece in terms of kind of creating various choices. So you had your standard text options. One of the options, let's say we're talking about trigonometry. So we're talking about sine and cosine and angle measurements. So if I needed to put something in, let's say angles, I might want to use just a simple degree sign. So I could pull that from our special character option, and I think it's right here. So if you just need a simple special character, you're more than welcome to use that special character menu. If instead you wanted to put in math text, and I would say this is for anyone using equations in chemistry or physics, math text, I used it for some of my special formatted spelling content when I was doing phonetic spellings of different things. So you might see different options there, but that's super useful to use our math editor to pull that content up. So if I click on this math editor, it brings up this window. And there's a couple things you're going to want to know about this. First of all, if you have no idea how to use this bright orange button is super helpful. It allows you to get a quick overview that'll pop up, explain what's happening. But I'm going to work my way through this right now. So these menu options at the top have drop-down options. So I could use a square root or a different like third degree root or something like that, cubic root. I could go over, let's say we're doing trig, I could click sine or cosine, and it's gonna just pull up this option. So sine if theta is, let's say, so sine of x is 2/3, and I can preview and see what that looks like. So here, I don't even have to know anything about this LaTeX coding. I just have to go from here, and there are three options: align at, left aligns, inline, it allows you to put text within different pieces. So this would be kind of wherever I could put text before and after, and block math, you'll see centers that option. So the one thing you do want to know is that if you start playing around with the code, let's say I add something here, the drop-down preview thing does not actually remain there because it's in one direction. So if you want to use the drop-down, I could still kind of play with it and add some stuff in, and it would add the coding, but it would be a little harder to work with. So I recommend that if you are not familiar with LaTeX coding, that you use our drop-down and do all your work at the top before you start putting stuff in. So let's remove all those extra pieces. I can add this part in. You can see what that looks like. That centered block math, sine over whatever. So definitely options as you're working your way through your math editor. And feel free to play around with that, see what you have. If you think we're missing something, just let us know. But you have all sorts of options within there. So let's say I wanted to add a couple different pieces. So at the bottom of this section, you'll see these light yellow kind of boxes. That means there's embedded multimedia, and we're going to talk about that at the end of this session. So I'm going to hold off on that right now. There's an interactive here, but maybe in my kind of discussion or at the end, we have a couple interactives in the review. Maybe I want to add in here's a reference sheet. So this particular reference sheet, I'm actually going to click over to a study guide. This was one of those related resources for this particular section. So if I go up to related, you'll see that there's a trigonometric ratio study guide right here. If for some reason I didn't want to add it to a related modality, that would probably be your best bet. Or let's say I had something that wasn't CK12 that built into our system and I couldn't add it as a related modality, I could simply copy a URL from something else, and I could go into here, and if I scroll down to where I was, I could put a hyperlink here. And I would say the biggest reason that you would use hyperlinks, and you can even have it open in a new window if you don't want it to replace the window you're on, but the biggest reason I see teachers using hyperlinks is to hyperlink to copyrighted content. So let's say your school has a license with a particular practice session, you have a license to use materials that other schools might not have that don't fit under our copyright. You could put a link out there, and then when you hit their login wall, any of your students who have logins could access that content, but other people who hadn't paid that licensing fee wouldn't be able to access that. So that's one option if you want to kind of include resources that you can't put into our system. That's probably the best reason to use our hyperlink option. So another choice that might be super useful, let's say I added a summary section. So right here you can see there's a table. So if I click into here, this is a table option. So you can insert a table. I can talk about my table properties. So let's add a new kind of table reference here. I could right click on this. There we go. And I can do table properties. I can insert rows. I can add different pieces. It's not like the full set of table options, but you can definitely add a border. Your table caption is kind of a title option. So trig functions, if I wanted to kind of write out sine, cosine, and tangent, etc. So definitely play around with the table option. You might also find what's super useful is our element box. So this is something I discovered partway through working here. And for all of you that have used a more traditional textbook that had kind of blue call-out boxes for formulas or different pieces, maybe because it's right triangle trig, I want to remind them about the Pythagorean theorem. It's a super useful piece. I could even put a math edited equation in here, and I could say, okay, I want up here a squared, let's do this one. We're gonna go back here for a second and actually clear that out. It's easier to sometimes clear it than to go from there. So if I want something other than x, I do need to pick my x to the y choice. So here we have this, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I could fill this in. A squared, b squared, c squared. Let's say I want that centered, so I could put that in there. And you'll see that might be a useful kind of just call out for those particular pieces. And then one of the last things, we'll talk about images later, we'll talk about media later. Right now that media is grayed out because I'm within an element box. So if you're in a box or super formatted text or like a header, you won't be able to use that. But once I click into regular text, that will show up. You do have the option for horizontal line. And then the last piece that I might put, review and summary, is a bunch of definitions, let's say. So here I might add in, and this is just a formatted choice. It's not necessary. You can do whatever you wanted. No metric ratio. Here's a definition. I could say it relates an angle to a ratio of 2 sides. You can go into more details about right triangle. And then I have 2 options. I can hit enter and I can go backwards. And if I'm within that definition, it will go from there, make the hypotenuse the next piece, and use this kind of increase decrease to work your way through. Side, opposite, a 90. And here's an example where I'm going to use that special character, 90-degree angle. Or let's say I just wanted to add a new one. I could go up and I could add a new definition, and it would add in a new piece. So I can choose to keep this as a draft or to finalize this draft. If I kept this as a draft, I personally would be able to see these updates. It would bump me back into the main editor. I could save it there. So if I save this, and then I went over and I looked at that section. So I'm going to scroll down, expand this particular piece. I, as the person having made the edits, the owner of this account, I can see all of those updates. And you'll see this draft option. So if I scroll down to the end here, all of my definitions are here. My Pythagorean theorem it is listed here. My trig function table that I haven't bothered to finish filling out is there. And note that there's no assign button available right now. And if I open this up, I can't assign to class because this is still in draft format. Before you assign it, you do need to finalize that content so that the students can actually see what you're trying to assign to them. So just kind of keep that in mind. So that hopefully gave you an idea of the different pieces within that editor, except the multimedia pieces and the image pieces, which we will be going throughout this webinar. But maybe it's a good time to stop and see what questions we might have, and I can see what I can answer as we go through.
Great. We have a question here about, are there any lesson plans that go with the FlexBook?
So for our newest middle school math ones, you'll see those. So let me go back to CK12 for a second. And if I open up this 8th grade book, I'm logged in as a teacher. So if I pick a section within here, you'll see in the related modalities, there is a lesson plan that goes with that. We're working on kind of teacher guides for our newest 2.0 FlexBooks, and I know those are rolling out over the course of the year or so for some of our science books especially. But the newest middle school math books that we just launched have lesson plans built in at that section. Some of our other books, you may want to check out an older teacher guide for some extra suggestions on teaching that particular topic while we work to build those resources for the 2.0 books.
From the grid in the upper right, we have a question. Where did you find the quiz to add?
So the quizzes, let's go back to my library for a second. That CK12 logo is my favorite quick kind of go wherever I need to go option. But if I go to my library, I have created quizzes. Now those quizzes were created by either customizing CK12 practice, which you can do through if I explore CK12 practice through this practice browse option right here, or through kind of finding a modality page for practice and customizing it. But that's something that you either created yourself or that you did and customized from our practice, and those will all show up within here. So then if I go ahead and I pull up my newest FlexBook that I was working on, and I go into the section that I was just editing, you can see Start. And right here, this practice, when I click Switch to Quiz, these are all quizzes that this particular account has made. So I did some customization of a physical science book, so there's some quizzes in there. I'm going to be showing you this pulley quiz in a little bit, so that's available there. But you either created it from scratch or you've already made it, and that's why it's showing up there.
And there's a really good question here that asked, if you create a FlexBook 2.0 from scratch, will it be able to work with the adaptive practice?
Yeah, so what you would want to do if you created it from scratch is that you would go to this details option. So if I click on here and I look at my concept details, you would need to, if you create from scratch, you won't have a primary concept selected already. So if I'm in editing it on that details tab, you'd want to pick your primary concept. And any practice that's in our system, you can tag to that practice option and it will start showing that practice up there. If it's content that you are making from scratch, you would need to create a quiz to go with it, and you can do that. So if it's a math topic, a science topic, or our spelling are the 3 practice questions we already have, types of practice questions, you can easily tag and just pull that straight in. If it's something else, you'd want to make your own quiz and add that in there.
Let's answer one more question before we continue on here. And it was a question of how would you get started with using CK12 for an integrated science that you might use like in a freshman class?
Sure, and I would say you'd kind of do that the same way that I just did this book. So if you remember, I pulled from this book one textbook, which was my Algebra 2 book, and then I pulled a section from pre-calculus as well. So for an integrated science book, let's say I wanted to pull and combine life and physical science. So I could go into my life science book and I could click customize here or add to FlexBook textbook. And what I would do is I would customize one or just start from scratch. Let's say I add to FlexBook textbook. I'd create a new FlexBook 2.0. Let's call this my integrated middle school science. And it would add that book to it. And then I might go back to subjects and I'd pull up my physical science book. And I would go ahead and I would add this to that new integrated middle school science book. And then if I went to my library, so back to CK12, pull up my library, you'll see within that book, kind of the first half of it would be physical or life science, and then the second half would be all my physical science pieces. And I could delete anything I didn't want, but I would recommend kind of pulling from multiple sections and then going from there.
Fantastic. So I think before we go on to the next section of today's content, I want to show you a couple of short videos here of teachers customizing FlexBooks to meet the needs of their students. So the first clip of a social studies teacher, Jonathan Wood from Tullahoma, and the second is Jessica Favelas Casillas, who's a chemistry teacher in El Paso, Texas. So let's go ahead and give a listen.
My favorite thing about it is you can update, change content, adapt to what you need for that classroom. If I have some content on there that I think is not working, or the students don't like, or that I don't like, that it's just for whatever reason it's not working the way I thought it would, I can find other stuff and use other stuff to change those chapters and change the format of everything. I can also upload videos anytime I want to there, upload any pictures that I need on there, any other resources, as needed. So that's what I like the most, but I can kind of form it the way I want to.
We were asked to reorganize the FlexBook that was already there and adapt it completely to EPISD and our curriculum, our scope and sequence. We added things that were student-friendly, we added videos, and I think that was a really good experience because as a chemistry teacher, I knew what my kids were needing as far as a textbook, as far as content went. And I could rely on the textbook to have videos and interactives and any kind of visual that I thought they needed that they couldn't get in a standard textbook.
Let's have Katie show you some components of adding new images to your FlexBooks.
Thanks, Carl. So they were talking about kind of adding in images, adding in multimedia, really, leveraging the options within CK12. So I want to just show these two screens quickly, and then I'll show you how to do this for images. But the first thing is that when you first choose the image option, you are going to want to probably choose a file for that image. We don't recommend using the URL option because website URLs change, but if you upload the image, it is not going to break within our system. Instead, it will still be there at all different points in time. Then below that, we've moved the attribution screen to that first tab to make it super easy to update and make sure that you always include the attribution for any images that you have there. And then over on the image options tab, you'll see choices like figure versus inline and different pieces there. So I'm going to actually steal the screen over from Carl, and we're going to jump right into a book, and we're going to see what that looks like and how it goes from there. So let's say I wanted to go into, this is a physical science for middle school book. I am going to choose to customize this book. And I can say demo for, let's say it's July 10th. And then I'm going to pick a section. So let's go into working machines and maybe pulleys. So if I jump right in here, I can open up this section and save the title. And once I'm in here, you'll see this first image. If I click on it, it has the image copyright information. So note that it says CK12 Foundation, Zach Wilson. He took this picture. We made sure to add that piece in here. Let's say for some reason I accidentally deleted this picture. And I said, oh, I need to include it. But because I work at CK12, I have a copy of it. So I'm going to insert that image again. I'm going to, as I said, choose that file to upload it. And then I'm going to make sure to note that I hold the copyright. The source is CK12 Foundation. It's not on a website anywhere, and the credit goes to Zachary Wilson. Now, anything that I choose to add to this system, you are licensing to CK12. We made a note on the terms of use on how you're licensing that, and then how others are using it under our CC BY NC license. So just make sure if you have any questions, you read that, but anything you hold the copyright for, you're putting there. Now, let's say you didn't hold the copyright. This was a third-party image. You could click I do not hold the copyright. And your options are something that's in the public domain, something that is attribution only, or something that's attribution and share alike only. Anything else kind of beyond that for licensing would have copyright restrictions that wouldn't fit under our license. So we recommend that, well, we don't recommend, those are your choices. The other option is none of the above, and you get this big warning that says, sorry, you can't upload it that way. So I'm going to choose I hold the copyright. This is accurate because this is CK12 that owns it, and then I can insert this image. Before I do that, if I want to change anything about it, so let's say we have two options for type. So figure versus inline. Figure has captions, so let's say I choose this as a figure. I'm going to put Zach's pulley as a caption, and I can make it 3 different sizes. A thumbnail would be a teeny little size. A full page would be based on width. So just keep in mind that if you have a very narrow image and you choose full page, it actually might be super, super, super tall. But your standard kind of normal size is a postcard. So we'd go with that. And I'm going to insert that accordingly. And you'll see Zach's pulley right here. Now, if I click on this and I say, actually, I wanted it inline, I didn't need a caption, I could go back in, click on the image options and say, let's actually change that to inline. And I could choose my pixel width, let's say maybe 300 pixels wide, and insert that accordingly. That got chosen. Nope, I don't want it. Alt text. Oh, so I could put alt text in here, which is super helpful for anything that's being read aloud to students. And let's cancel that for a second. Let's try one more time from there. I'm going to just upload it cleanly. Zach. For some reason, it was sticking. So CK12, Zachary Wilson, and I agree to that piece. And now I can make this an inline image. So I could choose my pixel width at 300, and now I can insert this, but I'm going to add that alt text for sure. Oh, and because I've already uploaded and added the attributions, it's pulling those same attributions. It's making sure that those are correct for that particular piece. So here you can see this image back at the beginning. I am going to just click out of here for 1 second so you can see something. So let's say I didn't want to use that image and I wanted to replace it with something else. Flickr is a great resource because Flickr, I feel like, does a really good job right here. It notes the license for different pieces. So this license is the Creative Commons attribution license. So if you click on it, you can see this is that CC BY license. And so if I was going to pull this particular image, I could download this image. That would give me a clean download of it that I could then upload into our system. I would pull Juan Cabanillas as the credit because this is the person who made that image. And in Flickr, I could click share and pull the source because this is where that image would be coming from. And it's super important that you put where you pulled that from, both for a licensing piece and also so other users could easily find that image if they wanted to use it elsewhere. So just keep in mind that as you're putting images in, you want to make sure you attribute them correctly. You want to make sure that you include those pieces. And then your options as you go in here include kind of what type it is, whether or not it includes a caption. And if I did a figure, there's one other piece that the ID I could put in here would allow me to kind of hyperlink to that. So I could hyperlink to a particular piece, or I could hyperlink to any figure or table, and it would allow that user to jump up and down within a particular section. So that's kind of the short version in terms of images. Definitely check out that attribution piece. And I think we'll let Carl steal the screen back over and we'll talk about embedding media and then maybe do questions at the end of that piece.
All right, so our next section is all about embedding videos and interactives, inline questions, et cetera. And this is when our lessons really become really important. So let's hear from Katie more about this.
Thanks, Carl. So you can definitely embed different types of multimedia. The most common one would be videos. So you can pull a link from YouTube and put that in there. You can embed it cleanly. We also recommend that you pull simulations and maybe embed some of those simulations. Those launch in a new window. You have two options for embedding Clicks. You can embed the full Clicks that launches in a new window or just the interactive piece of our Clicks. And then you can also embed other media such as Google Slides presentations or anything that has that embed code. You just want to make sure that their license allows you to do that from whatever they have. There's kind of one other piece about slides you want to make sure. I know I have some teachers that can put some of their slide presentations in our system, but some have copyrighted material that they can't share outside their class. So just make sure you're not embedding those particular pieces. The next piece that we have in terms of embedding is you could, as we said, swap that practice. So that's attach practice there. And that allows you to kind of flip the practice for a quiz or for a different practice. You could also take questions from within a quiz and embed them directly within the text. You'll see this in our newest math books for middle school, and you'll see it kind of more throughout our content as we continue to vamp that up. So with that, I'm gonna jump back over to my screen and we're gonna show you what that looks like and how you might do that for a particular lesson. So let's say within this particular pulley one, if we open up, there was a video here. So I can click on this for a second. You can see that this is a YouTube video. You can actually preview what it looks like. Let's say I, once again, accidentally deleted that or wanted to put a new one in there. I luckily have already opened this video elsewhere on my computer, so I could easily access it. And from YouTube, you have two options. I can click share, and I can simply pull this share code for YouTube videos and just paste it in there. And our system will automatically put that video in because it recognizes it as a video that you probably want to embed and not just link out to. Alternatively, I could take that video and I could use this insert edit media, as long as, once again, this is a header, it's not going to work, but regular text, I can insert that media. And I can pull the embed code from YouTube. And from there, YouTube embed codes would be under this embed option. And that code, notice, is a bit different. You could start it partway through a video, so that might be a good reason to use an embed code versus just the kind of regular piece. And I'm going to copy that, and I paste this embed code in here. You don't want to put the embed code directly in the text, but only within this window. And you can see once again that I now have this particular video. So those are two ways to embed YouTube videos within our system. Now, the next option is that I could maybe embed a simulation or a Plex. So I think there's one already embedded in here. So this one right here, let's look at. So note that this is a simulation. So this simulation, if I go over to that particular sim, you can pull embed codes for any of our simulations in the top little ellipses right here. And I get the same embed code, copy it, paste it in here. So let's say I'm going to do this just twice so you can see that we inserted it again. And I could preview that and insert that piece. So I have that simulation in there. So you have the option to do that. And under related, not only is this simulation here, but there's actually a Plex interactive. And if you wanted to include the Plex directly within your text and not just as a related modality, I could open that Plex interactive right from here. So let's go back down here. Let's say I wanted to put it up at the top. Try out this Plex. Now you could pull it from there, or let's say, oh, here we go. This is my Plex interactive piece. I'm gonna load that so it includes the full piece. It looks like it was just missing the questions as we went through there, or the description. And you can browse our Plex using our Plex browse options, that explore menu. But once again, I'm gonna click this little ellipses and then embed. And there are two options for Plex. And so I'm gonna choose both of these so you can see the difference. I'm gonna copy that to my clipboard. And I'm gonna embed the short one and then the full Plex. And I'm gonna go back to that full Plex. And I'm gonna embed this. And you can see here, we get the full Plex to launch, and the other one has that piece. So I'm gonna do one more thing just right at the top so you can see what that looks like. Let's say I had a presentation that I wanted to share as well. So if I went over to Google Slides, which we mentioned, and I click File, Publish to the Web, I can pull an embed code from there as well. So I'm gonna publish this. That's fine. I can publish that option, and once it's published, I can copy this embed code and I can paste it in here, just like I did any other embed code. There's only a title slide, so it's not that big a deal. But no matter where you pull your embed code from, you're still using this Insert Edit Media option. And if I finalize this draft, it'll jump straight to that page so I can see what it's looking for, as opposed to back into my editor options. And you'll see a bunch of different choices. So my image is still here. It's a little bigger than it was because I changed the width on that piece. You'll see I put the video back in here. And then there's two options for Plex. So this Plex launches it, that's the full Plex. It launches that full window. And I can press Escape to exit that. So I'm gonna escape back into there. This one just pulls the interactive piece with the description at the top and then allows the student to interact with it directly within the lesson. So this would be a great place for inline questions. So if I go from here, we have that piece, we have the two simulations. And the last part, I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna just show you one other option for inline questions. So if I go in and I edit this section, I made a quiz on pulleys. Now I could take that quiz and I could add it and swap out the practice, but if I still wanted the practice and I just wanted them to try these specific questions, I could go to my library, I would pull up this pulley quiz right here and filter by quizzes, pull up that pulley quiz, and the option on the left side here has this embed choice as inline questions. So embed as inline questions, those put those questions directly within the text. And so if I go back into that section and embed them, you'll see kind of how those work out just like within our middle school math ones. So I'm gonna pull this up, I'm gonna add it in here, And we're going to check in on questions for a minute or two, and then maybe do some quick wrap up and stay on for questions as we go through. But let me just add this piece in right under that Clicks. So we're going to embed this for a second. And then if I finalize this, you'll see not only have I put in the little Clicks interactive to try with right there, but I've put in specific questions right underneath it. So here's the Clicks, it's loading the interactive, and here are the inline questions that it's pulling. So this is a great thing if you want to write your own questions to go with an interactive Clicks.
So Katie, we're going to be wrapping this up in just a few minutes, so we are going to have to answer a lot of the remaining questions after we wrap it up. But for anybody's welcome to stay on and hear those. We're going to be talking about the copyright. A lot of people have questions about copyright, and we'll be talking more about images. So please continue to ask your questions. We're just going to answer a couple questions about images right now, and then we're going to wrap this up. And so if you need to leave by the hour, we can offer that to you. All right, so Katie, there's questions about how would you make triangle images, or how would you include a Cartesian coordinate grid?
So within the images here, notice that I pulled that image from elsewhere. There is not an image editor built into our editor, so you're not going to be making images within this particular system. You'd want to make that Cartesian coordinate grid elsewhere. You'd want to make that kind of other images added. So you would use some sort of photo editing option, and then you'd insert that within our system. So just keep in mind that we are not a photo editor system, but that you can include images from elsewhere.
All right, Katie, can you talk to us next about publishing the work and maybe sharing it on the school's pages?
Sure. So the first thing that you want to know is that any of your FlexBook work that you're doing, we really encourage you to publish this. So the first question is, how do you publish it? So under that same choose option, you should see the option to publish. And when you click publish, that allows you to kind of go ahead and publish it, and that will then make it available via search. So that's the biggest thing about publishing is now when you publish it, people that don't automatically have that link because you shared the link directly, they can search for that particular piece. Now, why would you publish it? We recommend that you do that so others can access your book, that you add to the resources on CK12. Anyone with the link can access that anyway, so the copyright doesn't change whether it's published or not. But you definitely want to make sure that that piece is available for others if at all possible. And then the final thing is, once it's published, you can also add it to your school's page. So if we go to the next page, you can see that here's two examples of schools. One's El Paso Independent in Texas and Coeur d'Alene in Idaho. They have published a number of books. They've done a ton of work, and now their students and teachers can find all that stuff in one place. If we just kind of click one more time, you can see that if you want to create a page, you would simply email support with your name, job title, school phone, and website. We can confirm that you are that school. And then the person that manages that page would be able to add in any content. So definitely do that to kind of help make it easy to find and resources nearby as well as for your school.
Well, that has been a lot of information. I think all of us are wiping our brows at this point because it's been just a lot going on here. And so we're going to wrap this up. And then, as I said, we will stay on for as long as we need to answer all of your questions to make sure that we get you going forward as you need to. So like we shared in the beginning, we do have a really good advanced editing resource page that you can access both in the CEP book and also through the tiny URL CK12 ADV FB 2019. If you missed our Getting Started with FlexBooks and the 2.0 platform, we really recommend that you watch it or join us next week to catch anything you might have missed in terms of navigation and what we offer. To learn more about our newest interactive math FlexBooks, regardless of whether or not your state uses the Common Core, check out that session. Finally, those of you looking to customize content outside of STEM subjects or make your own FlexBook from scratch, we offer a whole session on community-contributed content that will go through the FlexBooks, as well as creating questions tagged to your own content. For those of you interested in assigning your FlexBook lessons to your students through one of our integrated learning management systems, we recommend that you join us live or watch the recording of our Google Classroom or Canvas and Schoology session. Note that these are short sessions focused on those platforms and do not count toward the required 5 live sessions of the program. If you enjoyed this session, I'd encourage you to sign up for one or more of our additional webinars called Case Studies. These sessions are designed to be about 45 minutes and include guest panelists from across the country. Our first one discussing providing professional development on CK12 is scheduled for 1 p.m. California time today. We have panelists from Nebraska, Tennessee, and New Jersey discussing how they approach professional development within their schools or districts, and even how they share CK12 with others through regional and national conferences. You can register for these case studies or any or the others on our main program registration page. Remember though, these case study sessions do not count toward the 5 live session requirements for certification. Don't forget the assignment for this session. You can find everything you need in the CEP FlexBook. This includes the text of all the questions, so you can review them ahead of time and prepare your answers before clicking Start Quiz to complete the assignment. Remember, once you click on Start Quiz, you need to finish answering that quiz in one session. You can't come back to it later. All right, we really value your feedback, and for everybody that has given us some feedback, we really appreciate it, and we love incorporating your ideas and feedback into future sessions. So if you haven't had a chance to go there yet, please do go back, and there is a link in the lesson in the CEP book. So please take a look at that right there. It helps us greatly. Finally, pay it forward. We ask that you consider piloting our brand new Common Core Interactive FlexBook 2.0s. These are really, really great books, and we're proud. And even if your state doesn't do Common Core, excuse me, it is really, these are great books to start with and make the small changes from those books that you need to address the standards in your states or countries. In general, pilot a 2.0 FlexBook. This is our new intelligent platform that really offers a great learning experience for all of your students. Adopt CK12 as your full curriculum. Of course, this is where you're going to see great improvement in your student learning. Plus, you'll be having great content that's been localized and customized for your teachers and students. Create a new FlexBook. Go into new subjects that then you can share with the world. And then invite us, once you've got all this up and running, send us an email at support@ck12.org, and we'd love to come visit and see all of these things in action. So please take some time and give us some feedback and share the student growth. Like if you have any data that are showing how things have improved, please share that with us. We're constantly looking for yet more examples of how students have really improved using the CK12 system. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me assure you that we'll continue to be supporting you. The entire team here will be staying on. Of course, if you have any technical issues or any specific CK12 issues, send them to support@ck12.org. Don't forget to let your social networks know about CK12. Please tweet on the Twitter and Facebook, and make sure that you identify us at CK12 Foundation, and also use the hashtag CK12 certified, and that lets other people know about this program. They can still join the program today. Okay, it's not too late. Well, that's it for today's core programming, but as promised, we will stay on for any additional questions. So to anybody that needs to leave now, we say see you at the next session, but let's go take a look at this list of questions.
Thanks, Carl. I'm going to steal the screen back. We have some questions for a number of different pieces. I'm going to try to plow through a couple of quick ones, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more conversation on copyright, because that's always the biggest question when we do this session. So one of the questions is, what's the difference between a basic Plix and a full Plix? So this is a basic Plix. This is the lesson right here. And the students can actually try it directly within the lesson. They're still in that lesson. There's just kind of a little quick piece, and they're just playing around with this interactive within the lesson itself. I could, as I said, write my own questions. These are not graded questions. This is an exploratory learning piece. If you did want to get a report on that quiz, you would need to assign that separately and have students do that outside of the inline question environment. But just a little interactive for the Plix or the full Plix launches the entire Plix, and that Plix includes not only directions and the interactive piece, but it includes challenge questions for the students. They can work their way through those questions. So that's kind of the difference between the basic Plix, which is within the lesson, and the full Plix that includes all the different pieces. So I'm going to close that out, jump back into the, let me do that one more time. It looks like I closed the whole window instead of that particular piece. So I am going to open that up one more time and reshare that screen. So we can pull that piece and share. There we go. Okay, so we're back in this particular piece. Hopefully you guys can see that again. But that launched Generally Escape, apparently. It would be a better choice than closing that window. And I can launch that particular piece. So that's the difference between the basic Plix and the complete Plix. Plix work across all devices that are larger than about a 9-inch screen size. So kind of your phone doesn't really work on a full Plix, just because there's too much real estate needed for that interactive. But it definitely works with Chromebooks, tablets, laptops, computers, all the rest of those. So feel free to use that particular piece. And then we have, I'm going to share let me go into this a little bit. So I'm going to go back to this book as a whole. We're going to show you a chapter option. So we had one person that said, hey, I added new chapters, or I wanted to move stuff within a chapter. And what you need to do, let's say I wanted to move combined magnetism and electromagnetism, you need to open both chapters. And when you do that, you can toggle, or you can move stuff kind of from one chapter into another. If this top one is closed, it means that I'm just pulling this up and putting it in between, and it adds it almost like an extra chapter. There is text there because it's a lesson. It's not a full chapter. That's why it doesn't have the green arrow option. But to put it in there, I would need to open it and add it within that particular piece. So hopefully that gives you that part. So we have one more question on Plix right now. Our reports generated for the full Plix. If you assign the Plix separately, then you will get a complete or incomplete mark for the Plix. It's not like a percentage score based on the questions. So I'm going to go into some copyright questions. So we have a question in terms of, I'm going to pull up my chapter section as again. But let's say I change the image here. So if I added an image for the FlexBook, I'd want to make sure to attribute that probably in the description of the FlexBook, because there's not really a way to do that within that particular piece. If I added an image directly within my text section, so I'm going to pull up the one I was editing just so that it doesn't have to make a new copy. I can attribute, let's say there's attributions that you want to include for that YouTube. Anyone could click out to that YouTube and see the full piece, but you can always put text above or below. We usually recommend kind of putting any information you need around that within the lesson itself. And then for an image, let's go into that image piece because that attribution component is a little bit tricky. So once again, there's kind of two options. So option A is you own an image. So that's like CK12 owns the image that Zach made, that he took that picture of, he added it in here. And so if you hold this copyright, then you can put the source, which would be maybe just like yourself, or if you have a website or something like that, or the only source is on CK12 if you're adding it from there. And then you'd put in the particular person that's did that. In this case, it would be your name. When you do that, you do not have choices about the license. You are choosing by uploading your own image to CK12 to license it to others under the CC BY non-commercial use. There's a little bit kind of piece in terms of like how you're licensing it to us that's a little different than how you license it to others. You can find out more information on this terms of use part, but that license is fixed. If you hold the copyright, you don't have a choice. Now, if you don't hold the copyright, then your options are public domain, CC by SA, or none of the above, which eliminates the option to upload an image. So I'm going to go back to that page on Flickr. So on Flickr, as I said, they do a really good job. This link right here where it says some rights reserved clicks over and it tells you what license it's under. This is the CC BY license. So if I was going to use this image in here, I would click I don't own the copyright. It's licensed under CC BY. I would put here. So let me say right in here, we have this image. Here is the credit that it goes from there. Now, granted, I'd want to upload the correct image, so I would want to download that first and upload it. And then I would take this link and say I want the link for where it was on Flickr, and I would put that as my source. So because I chose an image, if I was going to use that pulley image, the source and the credit come from there, the license comes from there, there's no choice. So you just need to figure out what license the image you're pulling is under, and that's what you choose. There's not really any questions. So if you hold the copyright, it's your image, it gets licensed under others under CC BY NC. If you don't hold the copyright, you pick the license based on what it's coming from. Now there's always questions about where do I find an image? How do I figure out what it is? I recommend Flickr because they have that different pieces in here in terms of saying exactly what it is. That's a good place to look. You can search under Creative Commons, but you always want to make sure that you check the license at the end of it, right before you pull it. Make sure whatever that license is, though, is the one you're working off of. And I think, so we have another attribution question. I'm going to go to that. It says, when you use a FlexBook, it doesn't automatically attribute the original authors. It depends on what you're doing to that FlexBook. So this particular section, if I look at the details, you can see the attribution for the section level is included there. That gets pulled cleanly, you're good to go. If I chose to customize this content, so if I went back from here, and you never ever want to do that because I probably just lost all my changes. So just make sure you save your work as you work your way through. But if I do this and I look at the book details, this author is CK12. We made this particular book. It's when you choose the add to FlexBook option that you're basically adding the chapters within that book. The book structure is already fixed. So that's the only case where you need to pull the original authors into that book structure. The customize option would pull it cleanly. The individual sections have all the attributions. But if you're combining multiple FlexBooks, it's pulling the original attribution piece from the book you started with, and you need to add in the extra parts. If you pull an image from a CK12 FlexBook, do you click I do not own? That is correct. You don't own that particular image. That image should contain, so let's pull up a particular section. So we just did work in machines and pulleys. So if I start this, all of our questions and images here have the attribution currently listed at the bottom. So the figure 1, figure 2, you can see the credit went to Zach Wilson and the source was CK12. So you should put that credit in back there. And in this case, because it's already licensed under CC BY NC 3.0, that would be what it would be under. You could put, so we can we'll make sure that that's available if you're pulling it from there. But if you're pulling from CK12 already, the license and credit should be included as you work your way through.
Well, Katie, I think we've gone through all of our questions. Just as a reminder, in just about 45 minutes at 11 o'clock is the case study, or is it 1 o'clock? LMS is at 11 o'clock. So we've got so much happening here. And then at 3 o'clock today, customizing adaptive practices is a lot of your questions that you've been thinking of as part of this session. You will be answered there, and finding out how to really harness the power of the CK platform by customizing the questions that appear with practice. So for us from Palo Alto here now, we say goodbye, and we'll see you down the road today.